People often ask me, how can I get my kid involved in show business? And I always say, I would advise that you take up woodworking because it's addictive. It's an addictive craft that is so satisfying that doesn't require the input of any corporate entities. So quite frequently in Los Angeles, when I would go to a big audition for like a TV pilot or something that like really would change my life, it's incredibly stressful. You're just doing your best for days to keep your cool. You go do the thing, and it's invariably for a room full of bankers. So it's a terrible room. Usually with me, I'm trying to get a laugh, and they're all like, they all have their abacuses out, and they're like, well, in Maxim magazine, he has a mustache, that's 17 points. And you leave, and it's just inscrutable. You're like, I have no idea how I did, which gives you a lot of stress and a lot of agita. So I would go straight to my shop and just start sanding a walnut table. And after just an hour of that, I'd put on some music, and I would see the tangible result of this work that I had done. That's the thing, is there's no way to describe the sensation. There's magic in it. Whether you're working with glass or metals or food or knitting or wood, you're making something better than it was. It was a pile of stuff, and now it's a lasagna. And you've done that with your magic powers. And so that sensibility, that zen, I find so incredibly healthy. Again, as a human being with foibles, when left to my own devices, I will happily, especially when I was younger, I'd be like, oh, I suddenly have the day off unexpectedly. Let's go get drunk and go to the movies. And that's fun once in a while. I don't, I don't disparage it, but it should be a special occasion. When you get to doing it with any regularity, that's when it becomes unhealthy. As somebody in the performing arts, when it's an ugly business, we've all kind of heard stories that are true about how much rejection and how superficial the business is. It's very seldom merit-based. So, for example, I've done very well. I'm very grateful for all the wonderful good fortune I've had. But me and my wife and all of our friends who have done well, we all have friends that we think are more talented than we are. And it didn't work out the same way for them. And so one of them is teaching college now. Their life took them on different paths. Anything in this realm, I have found it to be life-saving. Show business, you're supposed to hustle all the time. You're supposed to beat people's doors down and be flashy and selling yourself. And I was never able to do that stuff. If people weren't going to give me jobs based on the merit of the work I was doing, I wasn't interested in selling myself beyond that. And so I didn't do this because I was wise. I tricked myself into this by listening to the right teachers. By going away and working in my wood shop, that gave me a mellow demeanor to the point that I no longer cared as much about the TV shows. In my life, by chilling myself out in my wood shop, amazingly, when I got my big break, they said, oh, we love your wood shop. We're going to make him a woodworker. And somehow my woodworking, my antidote to show business, became part of my persona. And now I have a campaign doing commercials for a glue company. You go in knowing that as human beings, we never can achieve perfection. And so I feel like mastery of any skill or art form really more involves becoming much better at covering your mistakes. But no matter how much of a virtuoso a person becomes, I feel like if they're still in the mentality of a student or pursuing their discipline, then they'll never finish, ripping out a Beethoven symphony or playing a game of basketball and say, there, I've done it. That was the perfect rendition. Instead, what keeps us living and what keeps me vitally engaged is a constant pursuit of betterment. So I gave up on perfect a long time ago, and now, you know, I'm just chasing halfway decent. And the thing that I see as a major difference between my childhood and a lot of society today is that we've become so good at comforting ourselves. Consumer luxury has become sort of a given, you know. In most walks of life in this country, you can choose to live a life of ease, where you never have to really try very hard. You can cruise through school as long as you get passing grades. You can get some job with which you can cover your living expenses, and that allows you to just watch TV, play video games, to amuse yourself, to engage in leisure all of the time you're not earning your living. And to a certain frame of mind that might sound attractive, but I've kind of tried it at times. A lot of marijuana was also involved in my particular formula, and I quickly learned that it's depressing. That, I don't know, for me, I quickly thought, well, what are you doing with your life? Are you just gonna watch cool movies and then die? Like, part of this philosophy I'm talking about came to me naturally. I grew up in a family out in the country in Illinois. Both my mom and dad grew up on farms. I grew up working on my mom's family's farms. And so we were very frugal. It was very Little House on the Prairie in the 70s and 80s, which means we had a television, but we were still raising as much garden as we could, and everything, you know, we got this free farmhouse. In exchange, my dad had to build some cabinets for this farmer, and we hired a guy to roll this house 6 miles, and then we spent our lives there improving it. We'd paint it every couple of years. We built a little barn. And so, I don't know, just by naturally learning to enrich in my own life through my parents' activities. So, if you want to get on stage, learn how to use a chisel.
And we exchanged Dwight texts all day long. It's awesome. You're awesome. You bring us together.
The stuff that I grew up that was like my weird bits that I did with my cousin and my sisters and brother, the stuff that I thought was weird or that stood out to me, I focused on that, and through my theater training and then through my career, it was always the counterculture weirdness that spoke to me. There's a very specific group of us, and we find each other and say, oh, now we're 47, let's make a TV show together. I grew up in a very conservative small town in Illinois, in a very conservative family. It's an amazing family of heroes. There's about 30 of us now in this extended family, and I'm the only one that doesn't live within an 8-mile radius. And every single family member is either farmer, school teacher, librarian, paramedic, nurse, and we have one craft brewer. My brother, he's the king of the family. But I'm the only one, and I always had this idea that I wanted to entertain people, but I didn't have the culture coming in to, I never learned of the channels by which I might achieve that. And so when I was a junior in high school and you had to begin to declare what do you want to do, where do you want to go to college, if so, and it was pretty wild that I said, I think I want to become an actor. And the whole county was like, no, I don't believe you can do that from here. And I said, well, but those other people must have come from somewhere. And really, like all the channels, like the guidance counselor at school had a list of the 36 things you could study. And not only was actor not on there, there were no arts on there. The only one was musician. One guy from my town had gone to music school, and he became a band director at a college. And so that was their precedent. And they said, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? Go be a band director at a college? I was like, no, I want to, like, you know, make people laugh, or I want to be in movies and stuff. And so it was pretty crazy, but here's where some serendipity happened. I was with my girlfriend who was auditioning for a dance department at the University of Illinois. I met some theater students, and I said, what the hell are you talking about, your theater students? And they said, we study theater. And I said, well, then what? They said, you go to Chicago and you get paid to be in plays. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. This is what I'm talking about. I was like, went home, I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm gonna go do plays, and then I go to Chicago and they pay me to do plays. That's a thing, people do it. And so that's what I did, and my mom and dad were very supportive. I was somebody who had crazy ideas, but I worked really hard. They gave me a wonderful work ethic, and they said, you have some real cockamamie schemes, but you always do your best. And so we'll get behind you and you know, support you in this. And it took several years. And from age 18 to 26, those are formative years. That's a tough, scary time for your parents to say, okay, we're going to trust you. But eventually, you know, when they first came to see me in a Shakespeare play in a very small part at a big theater in Chicago, that was a big moment for me where I was like, well, see, this is something. 3 lines. You know, there are people in this show with no lines, so just watch me. And you know, it's something that it's a very personal thing, and you have to trust your gut. The world is always going to want you to do other things that make them feel safe, you know. Parents especially often have their own desires, and so to parents and children alike, I would say, trust your gut. Again, if you've lived one of these lives where you are in a household where people aren't using tools, or people aren't that practical, you know. There's a lot of urban and suburban households where people say, yeah, God, you know, when I get a flat tire, I have to buy a new car because I don't know what to do. Or if a light bulb goes out, I have to throw the lamp away because I couldn't tell you how that thing works. I don't think I have the right tools. To those households, of which there are many, I would say, find a place to try making stuff. And there's so many things you can do. And another great thing about the information age, or the proliferation of technology, is that you can literally learn to do anything now on YouTube. You can become a blacksmith just from YouTube. You're going to learn a lot faster if you find a blacksmith to show you. That's true of anything, if you have a teacher there. But just try stuff, you know. Neil Gaiman says something really profound about mistakes, you know, that it's a New Year's benediction that he gave. And to paraphrase, he says, I hope that in the coming year you have blessings and health and all that, but I really hope that you make mistakes. Because if you make mistakes, it means you're out there trying. It means you're taking a swing at achieving something. And if you're not making mistakes, it means you've given up. For me, thankfully, because of my chemistry, I came to understand that even if I wasn't succeeding, you know, even if I was making woodworking projects in an alley in Los Angeles 25 years ago, I was improving. And they were crappy, and I would make mistakes. But I pretty soon came to learn that those mistakes were some of the most valuable time I ever spent. I'm making 9 ukuleles right now in my shop in Los Angeles, and they're going to be just fine. They're going to sound like ukuleles, but I don't know if I'll ever make one that a great musician would pick up and say, wow, how did you make it sound so amazing? I know that, and that's okay, because there's a lot of other people who can pick up my ukuleles, and I'll just keep them out of Clapton's hands. If he comes around, I'll be like, yeah, I don't know, I think we got these at a garage sale. but they're beautiful and they're full of mistakes. I could show you 10 mistakes in every instrument and I'm not even done yet. But it doesn't matter. When it all goes together, people look at it, they see your creation, they're not going to say, well, you got 3 things wrong. They're going to say, holy cow, this sounds like a ukulele. I can play several Mills Brothers songs on this thing. And so it's a general pursuit of trying to add things to the world, trying to help rather than hurt. Ignore all of the channels. Ignore all channels of popular culture and focus on what you like and what you and your friends and or family like. It just goes to show how lazy most media outlets are, you know. If you just consume what's being fed to you, then you never find out if there's a really stinky cheese that might be your favorite thing to eat.
And we exchanged Dwight texts all day long. One of my favorite memories of Dwight was being in the Detroit airport, and this really overweight, crazy-looking, bedraggled baggage handler comes running up to me, and he's like, yo, Dwight, yo. And he's like running from a long distance, and he's holding out his phone, and I was like, oh, okay, he's gonna ask to take his picture. And he holds up his phone right to my face, and on it says, I can and do cut my own hair. And it says like, from Katie. And he goes, you don't understand, my daughter and I don't know why he talks like this, he's from Detroit. I don't know why maybe he was from the Bronx originally, or it's just my characterization. He goes, my daughter and I, we exchanged Dwight texts all day long. It's awesome, you bring us together. And that's what I think about is I think that doing comedy and playing Dwight is a service. Not to get grandiose about it, but you know, I have a talent for playing oddball characters and I can make people laugh, and that can help bring families together, and people will really enjoy it, and it puts a smile on their face, and I think that's a really great thing. I try and remember that. I grew up a very dorky, weird-looking kid in suburban Seattle, and to make matters worse, another way in which I didn't fit in was my parents were Baha'is, members of the Baha'i faith, and I grew up a member of the Baha'i faith. And one of the great things about that was that I had a very Catholic, from the original use of the word Catholic, view of religions. We soaked in all kinds of different beliefs. Jehovah's Witnesses would knock on the door. We would invite them in and discuss the Bible with them. We would have Buddhist monks traveling through town stay with us. We had books on Sufism and Sikhism. And I knew about all of these things, and I was raised to think about philosophy and religious thought and the soul and the spirit of humankind in a different way. Also really socially progressive teachings of the Baha'i faith, the equality of men and women, the elimination of racial prejudice, the equality of science and religion. So it was a big cauldron of big ideas in my household. And we were a weird and unhappy family, but nonetheless, that was a really positive thing that came out of it. Then when I moved to New York in my 20s, I really abandoned all that. And so many people do that grow up in religious households. They just abandon the way of their parents. I decided there couldn't be a God, there was so much suffering in the world, religion perpetrated so much evil. I wanted to go my own way and take my own journey, and what I did was I became an artist, and I just focused on being an actor. And all of my attention just went to, and my fervor went to theater and acting. And I really thought, you know, with my friends that went to school down at NYU, we would do little basement productions of Hedda Gabler or whatever, and we really thought we could change the world. If we did the right piece of theater in the right way, with the right audience, we could touch people's hearts and we could just blow their minds and just open things up completely. And I also focused on my career as an actor a great deal, and I became very me-focused and me-centered, just myself and my career and what next, and how do I get a better agent, and how do I get into TV and movies, and then I felt a yearning. I came to a crossroads. I hit bottom in a way. I was really unhappy. and realized that I just wanted something more from the experience of being alive. I was like, I was doing great plays. It wasn't changing the world. I was getting good agents and doing film and TV, and I wasn't happier. I was like, wow, there's an unease inside of me. And that led me back on my kind of more spiritual path to the Baha'i faith in a new and fresher way, in a more realized way. And I came to also understand at that point that there was no difference between being devout and being an artist. There's no difference between creativity and spirituality and philosophy. It's all about human expression, and it's all about seeking to transcend. It's about that yearning. And whether it's through science or through art, through service, through worship, it's the human experience of longing to connect with people, to connect with the energy throughout creation, and we compartmentalize all of these things. And I realized, oh, it's all the same thing. I play Dwight. That's just as much me being a service and worshiping as if I'm on my knees in some temple somewhere, or bowing my head in prayer to God in some way. It's really all just the same thing.